Welcome to another Dragonlance Saga Dungeon Mastering 101 episode. It is Palast Darkember the 24th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to be continuing my Dragonlance Gaming series all about dungeon mastering. Now, every dungeon master needs to begin in the same place, right? Excitement tempered by uncertainty. You're about to guide a group of wildly different human beings through a story that only exists because all of you choose to believe in it together. And that takes responsibility. That takes awareness. And it takes a willingness to understand not just rules, but people. So today we're going to lay the foundation for becoming a better dungeon master, as, you know, at least as best as I can help present. I don't know. Anyway, welcome to Dungeon Mastering 101, Core Foundations. Now, before we dive into this, I don't want to forget to remind you, of course, like and subscribe to this channel, ring the bell, and you can support this channel by becoming a patron on Patreon or a member on YouTube. You can pick up Dragonlance Media using affiliate links, and all those links are in the description below. So your help making this show continue on is very much appreciated. Thank you. All right. So, Drat's Logic, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in live. Chris, what up? Corey Thorne, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. All right. So, again, this whole series is just sort of me riffing on some ideas that I have and, I've sort of like put together. And I got a tickle in my throat, excuse me. And I'm hoping that it's helpful. This is the 4th episode I've done. So my very first one was about player awareness. And then, of course, I did one about game preparation. And then I did one about player types. Some of those are going to have tangential connections in this Core Foundations episode. So if you want to get into sort of nitty-gritty information, check out those other videos as well. And I'll just continue on with this DM101 series as we continue to extrapolate on different aspects of being a dungeon master and hopefully improving on your skill set. All right, so let's start here. Understanding people before dice. Before you think about combat mechanics, monster stat blocks, or world building, you gotta start with the most important element at your table, and that's the other human beings sitting around it. Now, this is where the player awareness video really comes in handy. There's a big furor in the past 5 years. I would say, maybe 3 to 5 years ago, where people were freaking out about how you need to put up warnings about D&D games and how, people weren't wanting to watch or play because they were afraid they're going to be triggered. And so you had to make a big to-do about it. And I called poo-poo on all of that and made a couple of videos. People lost their minds about it. And so I started this whole player awareness DM101 episode to address all of that and how I address my players in the games that I run. Now, I ran an Evil Dead campaign. It's like a 3 story arc, so it's 3 different sessions. And at the very beginning, I told them, look, this is Evil Dead. That means there's gore, there's sex, there's everything that makes people like me really want to tune into it. But if you're a player and you don't want to be involved in that type of stuff, this is not the game for you. And so I made sure that they understood what they were getting into because I was going to be raw and unfiltered in it. And I was very raw and very unfiltered in it. But we had a blast playing and everyone was laughing and engaged the whole time. And it was awesome because it was Evil Dead. But you do have to sort of warn people. You can't just like spring stuff on them. And so that's usually a session 0 type conversation in general. But knowing that as far as the tone of the game goes, I also addressed some of that in a previous episode. But we just need to address the idea that every player themselves is a mixture of personal history, culture and beliefs, unique motivations, individual learning styles, and wildly different comfort levels with performance, math, and social dynamics. All of that is informed into the game, how they perceive the game, how you run the game. Your job as a DM is not to homogenize them. Your job is to celebrate their differences and build a game that allows each and every one at your table to shine. Now, I need to be very clear about this. Not everyone is a good fit for every table. This goes for players and DMs. Sometimes you just have to make a call as a player or as a DM to either walk away from a game or to tell someone that they're just not a good fit and ask them to leave a game politely. It's that simple. Sometimes you got to be an adult and have those adult conversations. I've talked about this in the past. So recognize that no two people come to your table with the same expectations. The moment you embrace that, you actually begin to see the game not as a rigid structure, but as a living conversation. Because again, what we mentioned before in previous episodes, this is a shared storytelling experience. You as a DM do not own the game. You're running the game. And the people who are actually engaged in the world that you've created are also running the game because they're running their characters through the game. And so you have to remember, this is a collaboration. This is not some weird authoritarian dictatorship at the kitchen table. This is friends or new friends getting together to have fun. And that's all it comes down to have fun. All right, so there are 3 roles. Well, there's a lot more, but there's 3 primary roles of a dungeon master. A beginning DM often thinks that their job is to tell the story or just run the monsters, but those are only pieces of a much larger whole. You actually have 3 roles at once. You have to be the facilitator. That means you provide structure, you decide the pacing of the game, you want to keep the game moving by gently guiding everyone toward a shared experience. If people are being really slow or indecisive, you should step in and do your best to non-aggressively assist them. You have to be the arbiter is number 2. Rules exist to support fun, not to dominate the fun. You interpret those rules, make quick judgments, and maintain fairness, even when when the entire table is watching. So I always like to sort of have dice behind my DM screen when I used to DM in person a lot. I don't do that anymore. But I used to love to have dice behind the screen. And then when I started doing VTTs, I would have the dice be GM roll only. And I thought, why? Why am I doing that? I'm not getting any benefit from it. The players aren't getting any benefit from it. I'm not cheating, and so there's no reason for me to hide it, the dice rolls. And so I just started showing everything to the players because there's no reason not to. Most of the time, players aren't paying attention to that part of the game anyway. They're just sort of engaging with the scenario you set up. But to intentionally hide something, AD&D used to force this idea a lot where you would roll for the players a lot. You would make dice rolls and not inform the players whether they succeed in something or not. But the more I've ran games, the more I've played, I just don't there's no reason for that. The reality is everyone is role playing, right? So your human experience and knowledge does not invade into your characters, right? Ideally, that doesn't happen. It does leak in, of course. But so because your players know that their character didn't succeed or did succeed, doesn't change the fact that their characters believe that they did or did not succeed. And they don't always line up. And so it's really fun when players just dive into it and they know that they failed, but they, of course, pretend like they didn't know that because that's what the player would know. That's what the character would know, not what the players know. And so it's just character immersion, role-playing, and, suspending a little bit of disbelief in the opportunity of your character not succeeding at what they're doing. Okay, so the third part, number 3, is the story shepherd. Don't force a plot. You cultivate it. The players bring energy and curiosity and chaos and creativity. You channel that into the narrative that feels meaningful. And I talked about this a lot in the game. The last session we did, was it game preparation? No, it was player types, I think. In any case, don't railroad players. They will consistently go off the rails. And so all you have to do is gently nudge them in, either through creativity, through improv, through setting up encounters and roadblocks that you planned on earlier, just putting them in different places to help progress the narrative that you would like to continue. And ultimately, most players are going to be okay with that. You know, if they go off on a weird tangent and you're like, okay, well, how about this in order to steer you back? And they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize I totally went off the rails. I thought you were, you know, giving me information. And yeah, I'm fine going back here. Like, and that's to say, if there is like a structural narrative you're following, like a campaign, like a preset printed adventure or something to that sort. If you're just free-forming it, you can end up with the most entertaining sessions of your life by just hands off the wheel and let the players drive. And you get in some crazy places doing some crazy things, and it's a lot of fun. So be open to it is all I'm saying. All right, so a great DM doesn't control the story. A great DM leads the story. All right. You love it when everyone can see the role? Yeah, it creates trust for sure. You hear a lot from forever DMs that they struggle when they switch to player role. Have you found that? What's more enjoyable for you? I don't enjoy playing very much anymore, honestly. It's not fun for me. I have played in a couple games, and I tend to go off the rails a little bit, and I'd rather just not. So I prefer not to play. D&D has changed so much over the years. Yeah, Corey, it really, really has. But it's also become much more creative, I would say. The games that I was playing as a young man and as a kid, while I had a blast playing them, they weren't terribly immersive or inventive. You know, it was a lot of hack and slash and puzzle solving type stuff. And that was fun for what it was, but nowadays I like a much more story-driven experience than I did as a younger man. Because as a younger man, I was chasing experience, and as an adult, I'm chasing an experience. You know what I mean? The difference there? All right, so the next step in this that I'd like to talk about is the 5 pillars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of running the game. Now, everyone's going to have different versions of this. They might have fewer pillars or none, but these are the 5 I'm going to go over. Every session you run rests on 5 foundational pillars, and understanding these early will save you the most common beginner mistakes. Again, my game preparation episode has a little bit of this. Number 1, combat. Not about numbers, about tension and stakes and cinematic moments. Having experiences for players to remember. I have a D&D 4th edition experience that I have never forgot, and it was with a brand new player who had never played D&D before and who had told me after that it was the most exciting thing that he's ever done. He was a big video game player, and it was more exciting than any video game he ever played because of that moment, that experience. And basically it came down to we were loosely running one of that's like a 4th edition module that was like in this Undermountain dwarven sort of realm. And they were going into this cave that it was just a canned encounter that had like a devil in the cave. It was like a horned devil or something like that. This was years ago, so I'm going off memory here. But basically they went in, it had like this river of lava going through it and a bridge going over it. They went over to get to the bridge to attack the demon or the horned devil. The bridge collapses. And so he sees one of his friends get grabbed by the devil and thrown into like this rubble that used to be the bridge. And he's like sliding down the lava stream, and he's going to go off the edge and ultimately die, falling into lava. But he also saw this bracelet that was sitting just nestled right on the edge of the lava. And so he had to make a quick decision. Do I get the bracelet or do I save my friend? And through very creative role-playing, he ended up doing both. And his other friends took care of the demon, or the horned devil. And it was just this fantastic experience of him like reaching across the table, pretending he's reaching for that, as he like pulls out a hand crossbow and pops like this little string over to have his friend grab it, and he had to do this like weird what do you call that, water ski moment with the stone piece that he was on in the lava river as his friend was holding with one hand, grabbing the bracelet with the other. It was just a really cool, fun moment that just instantly connected him to D&D for the rest of his life. And the fact that I could run that for him and be a part of that experience was a huge treat. And I had such a good time running it. So just remember, combat, it's not always about you did 8 points of damage, they did 2 points of damage, you missed. Be creative with it. Do your best. And yes, it's going to get hard after 4 hours and an hour-long encounter. Sometimes you just don't really have anything left in the tank, but do your best. And then one thing that I learned from XDM 2nd edition was when someone kills a monster, maybe not every time, but sometimes, ask them how the monster dies, because then it gives ownership over the player. And that's a big moment where they can be creative and have fun and get excited because they're like, ooh, I get to decide? I'm not even the dungeon master. I get to decide how he dies. This is awesome. So that's always fun. All right, the next second pillar is exploration. So we had combat, now it's exploration. Let players discover, investigate, and poke around in a world that reacts to them. So this, of course, is going to be playing with the idea of traps, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's just NPCs, or it's just an environment. And not all of those situations are going to end in a positive experience, meaning good for the player character. I mean, the player is always probably going to have a good time because it was a interesting encounter or whatever. But, sometimes you have shit asses. It's just true. Some people are shit asses. Some animals are shit asses. They're just rude and they're not nice. And no matter how pleasant you may be or how hard you try to win them over, they're just going to be rude. And I like every once in a while to have NPCs that are like that too. Sometimes you can't win someone over. Sometimes they're just shitty. And it's that simple. And you have to be shitty back to them, not necessarily fight them, but some people who are like brutally honest actually appreciate it being given back to them. They like that reciprocal honesty. And so you can actually win people over that seem just shitty by being shitty to them too. And they're just like, all right, I see you. I thought I could just, walk all over you if you would let me, and you're proving that you're not going to let me walk all over you. And I respect that. So now I'm going to respect you. Like, I've run into human beings like that in real life. So why not have an NPC like that? Just every once in a while. Not everything has to be crazy, but, And then, of course, environments. If they're going to destroy an inn, say, set it on fire, yeah, that's going to have real world implications. And that's going to have serious consequences for anyone who has witnessed it. And then, of course, the legal issue of the person who did it. Like, no matter where you live in a fantasy game world, it is not okay to murder, steal, or burn down buildings. And there are legal consequences that if you are caught, and they will send people after you to catch you, that you will have to face. So always think about stuff like that. The environment matters. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about. Social interaction. I was just talking about that with the shit asses. NPCs, factions, rumors, alliances, all of these are opportunities for players to express themselves. And that's why I love Dragonlance so much. It's got such great built-in organizations, from the knighthoods to wizards to national identities. I mean, they just have tons of organizations and thieves guild and just criminal syndicates, and like, you could do anything. And so to make a player fit into the world is really, really easy with a little bit of back and forth between the player and the dungeon master. And it makes them feel a part of the world. And so it's always really great. So always let the players express themselves. Hopefully they're doing it through the character as the character would, meaning they're referencing alignment and race and class and past experiences, etc. There's something about D&D, the collaboration aspects, that's so much more enjoyable than a video game. Yeah, I totally agree. Even I used to play a lot of MMORPGs. When I was in the U.S. Army, I was stationed in Mannheim, Germany for 3 years, and I lived off base in Weinheim, Germany. Beautiful place. I love Germany. But we didn't have a big social connection over there. And my wife was over there with me, living off base alone. And we also, halfway through, had our firstborn, my son, who is now actually serving in the Marines. So we were totally isolated. And so the easiest way for us to engage with other people was actually playing EverQuest, the old MMORPG, because it had just came out at the time. And we played the shit out of that and had a great time. After that, I did EQ2 and I did Lord of the Rings Online and all that stuff. But as much as I had fun with playing those MMORPGs, none of it was anywhere close to the immersion and the excitement and the fun that I have actually just sitting down to a TTRPG. Every time, it's better. Every time. Yeah, EQ, man. Those 4 hours corpse saves were nightmares. Nightmares. You just sit around as a naked character waiting for someone to drag your corpse to a safe zone so you could go in and grab your stuff. And sometimes it took like 4 hours and you're just sitting there. Oh, all right. Anyway, downtime. Okay. Break room, breathing room, character reflection, progression. The downtime is the glue between the adventures. And downtime isn't just between sessions, like, if you play every week, for example. It's not the week between games, though that counts as part of the downtime. Downtime is also not being actively engaged as your character and having those moments where you can actually have a conversation with other players about what you just experienced. Like, wow, that was crazy, right? We just faced a beholder. I didn't even know these things existed. That was nuts. Just have those like downtime moments, and there's built-in breaks for that. In AD&D, it's suggested that after every encounter, your player just sort of has downtime for like 10 minutes or an hour. And that's because combat is just insane on the human body. Like, fighting is crazy. That's why fights usually only last like 30 seconds to a minute in real life, because your adrenaline's pumping, you get exhausted. It usually ends up on the ground and you just end up like, all right, are we done? Or, someone gets knocked out and you walk away or something. Like, people usually just give up because you get tired and it hurts. I don't know if you've ever been hit in the face. It hurts. It's not fun. And so combat, you have to recuperate from it. And this whole idea of like going a full day, so what is that, like 12 to 18 hours, fighting 8 times in a day or something, and you're just going to be okay with that? No, your body's going to break down instantly. Like, fighters, professional fighters, have like 2 or 3 fights a year if they're insane. Usually it's like 1 or 2, and that's professional fighters. So, professional adventurers having combat multiple times in a day is just bananas to even consider. And so you have to remind your players, okay, now you just went through a lot here. You have like 2 hit points. How about we don't go on that massive over the mountain hike and instead you recuperate for a day and a half or 2 days or something? Or, in later editions, they have built-in short rests and long rests so that you are sort of suggested and encouraged to just sit back, relax, and have those downtime moments. They don't have to last long. And again, as the Dungeon Master, you need to judge pacing with player expectation and how much fun they're having in a moment. But provide the opportunity is all I'm saying. All right, the 5th and final pillar is character arcs. The emotional through lines for their characters. Every player is the protagonist of their own personal story, even within the larger campaign. So you'll see in my Tyranny of Dragons campaign, for example, players will often run into each other before the campaign starts. Like, if a couple players can't make a game, I'll have like a prequel session where we just sort of connect with the characters so that they actually do have history and that they can reflect on that history later on in the campaign. But then I'll also have like parents or other meaningful friends or connections throughout the NPCs in specific regions for the players to connect with, because then they feel like they are immersed in the actual world with their characters. They feel like they're a part of it all. And that's really, really important when it comes to a campaign setting and not just like a one-off adventure or a one-off session. You want your players to feel invested and a part of things. And that means they're going to be more considerate and they're going to think before they act in some cases. And that's really, really important. You don't know if DM's like this or not, but as a player, you always try to pick another player to have a conversation with in-game to try to establish further their charisma. I actually like it when, I prefer it when players interact with each other. Like I encourage it and I want them to do it desperately, especially in combat and out of combat. If you're in combat and no one's saying anything except for rolling their dice, saying what they're going to do, you could be working together. And the difference is, watch Iron Man, the film, Jon Favreau. And it's great because Tony Stark is going out around just whipping ass, and it's awesome. Then watch Avengers, and you see all of the superheroes working together and playing off of each other, and it's infinitely more engaging and interesting to watch. And if you were one of those heroes, to be a part of, because they're shouting at each other, making snide comments, asking for assistance here and there. I mean, that's, you have or if it's players, hopefully you have like 2 to 6 players at your table. Like, hopefully they're talking to each other in combat. Otherwise, how are they going to know what you're going to do or what they're going to do? Because it's all happening instantly, within a 6-second time span. You have to communicate. And I love that. I really, really do. All right. You dated an EQer. I had to get that. All right. So ultimately, your best sessions mix all 5 of the ingredients. Too much of one can throw everything off balance. So always remember combat, exploration, social interaction, downtime, and character arcs. If you keep those in your mind when you're prepping for your game, you're going to end up with very happy players and a very fun session. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is player motivations. Now, this has a lot to do with the player types episode I just had. So if you want to go back and watch that to get more involved information, I'm going to hit some highlights and bullet points here because they are germane to the basics of DMing, right? The core foundations of DMing. So if you want your table to stay engaged, you must understand why each player sits down to play. These correlate with the player types I mentioned last week in the actor, explorer, investigator, power gamer, slayer, storyteller, thinker, and watcher. But I'm going to use a little bit more accessible language in this so that there's not as much second guessing or conflation involved. Most players will fall into blends of these 8 motivations. Combat driven, they love to fight, they love tactics, and they want victory. Story driven, they want narrative depth. Social driven, they thrive on role playing and interactions. Puzzle driven, they enjoy clever problems to solve. Power driven, they want to grow their character stronger and they want to gain prestige. Discovery driven, they love lore, they love secrets, and they love world building. Character driven, they focus on personal character arcs and emotional journeys. And then chaos or thrill driven, they want surprise, they want randomness, and they want wild moments. And all of that is reflected in that episode, so go check that out if you haven't yet. So your job as the DM for players like these, identify each player's blend, then feed them the contents that light them up. This alone can transform your DMing because what it means is you're not passively setting up a world for players to engage with. You're engaging with the players. And that changes everything. So definitely consider it. All right, the next step I want to talk about, practical skills that every beginner should practice. You don't need to master everything at once, but start with these reliable skills. All right. Number 1, there's only 4 of them, so it's not going to be crazy long. Number 1, keep the game moving. Perfect decisions are less important than decisive ones. Make a call, keep the energy flowing. There's been many, many times when I'm challenged on rulings, and instead of me looking it up, or I'll take a second, look it up, and maybe I can't find the answer, I'll just say, all right, well, let's just do it. And then I'll address it after the session. What you don't want to do is have a screeching halt, a record scratch in the middle of your session while you're investigating a rule. Now, have I done it? Yeah. And I always hate that I do it because sometimes I feel like I'm being taken advantage of when I make that wave of a hand call. And so I want to make sure that I'm not being taken advantage of. And that's the dangerous side of waving it away and just saying, okay, well, let's just keep it moving. Go ahead and do it. Sometimes players will take advantage of you. You know, your niceness, your willingness to improv, and not for the story's sake, but for their character's sake. And in most cases, that's not an issue at all, or it's not a big deal, but sometimes it can be. And so you have to find that balance in your games with your players. For me, it's a bit of a mix between hand waving and checking stuff for a moment. But again, I've caught myself like going way too deep and just going, all right, you know what? Who cares? Let's just move on. Because sometimes you have to. Number 2, learn to say yes, but. Okay, not no. Yes, but. Yes, you can attempt that. But here's the risk. So when a player says, hey, I'm going to burn down this location, I'm going to say, okay, if that's what you want to do. However, these are the things that are going to happen as a reaction to that. And that's just how it works, right? Like you just have to deal with it in those cases. So don't ever say no. Remember, this is a game of improvisation. And the number one rule of improv is yes and. In this particular case, it's yes but. Because we always have to remember, you're in an established world in most cases when you're playing. That means there's consequences. And so you have to make sure the players understand those consequences, because maybe they were just playing a game where they didn't have any consequences like that in it. And so they're just not aware of it. And that's entirely possible. And maybe they're just not even familiar with your game world. And so they wouldn't understand what the consequences are. It's your job as a DM to educate them on the consequences of their actions and ask them, are you sure you want to do that? Because in some cases, it's going to be a good consequence. In some cases, it's going to be a very bad one. But they should at least have an awareness that there is a consequence to their actions. That also helps with immersion and decision-making as well, and staying true to your character. This projects player agency while preserving challenge, ultimately. All right, number 3. Prep for flexibility, not for control. Prepare situations, not scripts. Players will destroy your plot. They will. Just let them. It usually leads to something better. And here's the honest truth. I love playing with my friend Kyle. He's really, first of all, he's witty as shit. He's really, really funny. But he's inventive. And he'll be like, oh, I bet this is going to happen. And sometimes his suggestions are better than what I had planned in the first place. And so I'll go with his. And I'll do it in a way so it's not when he expects it or how he expects it, or maybe even in the form that he expected it. But he absolutely moved my brain into a different direction than I would have otherwise. And I love that. So, I mean, he's not the only one that does that of my players, but it's just as an example. I've been playing with him since I was in middle school, and I think he's great. He's a wonderful human being, and definitely, if you have those players, listen to them, because if they're better than you at something, or they suggest something you'd never even considered, it might be because they think it's an interesting way to have something play out. And maybe it is. All right, and the last line here is share the spotlight. Track who hasn't had a moment to shine in your games. Then give them a moment to shine. Players remember how you make them feel far more than any plot twist that you devise that you think is witty or intelligent or anything. They just want to have fun and feel a part of the game. And so from time to time, always reflect on, well, what has this character done in this campaign or this adventure? Have they really had a moment to stand out, or have they been heard? And it's something that, you're going to have to continually address throughout the whole campaign. If someone feels like they've been, not all players want the attention because they're not as inventive in the moment, but almost everyone does want to feel involved and special. That's why they're playing the game. They want their character to feel like it's a part of something special. So make them a part of something special. And it doesn't have to be heavy labor. It doesn't have to be heavy lifting on the character's part or the player's part, but just provide an opportunity and give them agency to have a moment of meaning, because they're going to remember it. Let's see. your DM is open to searching rules, but that was back in AD&D days when there was a player handbook and Unearthed Arcana. Pretty easy to search them. Since we play online, you're absolutely right. He has kept the game going. Yeah, you have to. Have you ever been a player and thought, if I was a DM, I wouldn't do that? Sometimes it's tough to keep quiet. Yeah, Julian. Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I don't often. I think the problem is that I can't turn off my DM mind, and I always go, well, I would do it like this, or this is how I would do it. And I know how annoying that is when I'm DMing and someone says something like that. Oh, why don't you do it like this? Or why don't you do that? It's annoying and it's frustrating. It's backseat driving, and no one likes a backseat driver. And so I don't want to be a backseat driver to someone else, you know? So I've absolutely run into that, and I prefer just to keep my mouth shut. If I can. I tend to run off at the mouth. I don't know if you can tell. But if I can shut up and just go with it, I will. Because I'm not playing in a game to make someone feel bad or to make myself look like I'm better than anyone else, because I'm not. I'm just another dude who's playing another game. That's it. There's nothing special about it. But you are trying to have fun and not hurt someone's feelings, right? So that's where I come from. One of the aspects of your DMing that you like is you challenge the players on bad ideas. I remember trying to dress up as a valet to track a villain to spectacular fail. I didn't think it was a bad idea. I was just, this was in a in nomine game that he's talking about. He took over the role of a valet, and it was very much just like, okay, well, where are you going to take the car? You know, questions like that, where they're like, I want to take over this role because it'll give me a moment of knowledge, but your character doesn't know the ins and outs of that particular hotel. Where do they park the cars? If you just took that job over, like, you know, maybe you just like knock the person out. Maybe you just take over as a tavern keep, right? Well, where are the room keys? Where do they keep the new ale casks? Like, you don't know that unless you look for it. And so that's why I love asking those types of questions, because then it forces the player to go, and it'll make them either say, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to have fun with this and just go sort of nutso with it and have some, you know, laughs. Or they go and ask questions. Hey, you know, it's funny, I just totally forgot. Where are we parking these cars nowadays? You know? And then you have this wonderful NPC interaction. Like, what's wrong with you? Haven't you worked here forever? You know, those type of things. I mean, it's always fun. It's always fun. Hey, Michael, thanks for tuning in. You really feel like it's the realization of D&D as a beautiful narrative storytelling gaming experience? 100%. Absolutely. You clearly hadn't thought your valet idea through. No, but we worked through it, and it ended up being very, very funny and very fun. So it worked. All right, so the next and kind of the last point I wanted to talk about before we close this session down is the first big secret of DMing. You ready? Now, if you're a new DM, listen. And here's the truth. I'm not going to pull any punches here. This is important. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know every rule. You don't even need to be the most creative person at the table. You don't. So don't feel like you have to be better than everyone else or smarter or know every single rule or be perfect in your style. Because you shouldn't really even have a style. Because your style is defined by the players you're playing with and the game you're running. And I'll tell you what, my style is very different if I'm running an Evil Dead game versus if I'm running an Innomine or a Vampire the Masquerade or a Call of Cthulhu or a Dragonlance game. You have to adapt to what you're playing, right? And who you're playing with. So be okay with making mistakes and be okay with failing. But part of that means if you do make a bad call and you find out later that you made a bad call, tell the player and say, look, I'm sorry. It was in the spur of the moment and I made this call, but you were right and I should have listened to you. I apologize. It's important to have those moments because, one, it makes the players feel like you're listening to them and that you are actually learning from them, because you are and you will every single game. So just be humble, because There's nothing worse than a know-it-all, because they never do. And there's nothing worse than someone putting on airs and pretending like they're better than everyone else, because they never are. In Excalibur, Merlin the magician is talking to King Arthur about trying to get across a river because Sir Lancelot, before he's actually part of the Knights of the Round Table in the film, is blocking it. And he's looking for a liege lord, someone that's worthy of his sword to fight for. And King Arthur is asking Merlin about him. He's like, look, there's always someone cleverer than yourself in life. There's always someone better than you. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. But that's life too. It's not just in a film. It's not just in a game. That's life in general. There's always going to be someone that's better at something than you are. So accept it. And remember, you're only here to have fun yourself and to facilitate fun for other people. And these other people are your friends or new friends, potential friends. So just have some fun. Have some laughs. Don't take it so seriously. Just loosen up. Don't worry about it. And if the ruling makes sense in the moment, then call it. Just make the ruling. Even if it's against the rules, you're the dungeon master. You get to do that. All right. You just have to be present here. You have to be attentive, and you have to be willing to learn session by session. Every great DM started by fumbling through their first adventure or their 20th adventure or their 50th adventure. That's life. Just have fun playing. That's really what it comes down to. All right. That would have been an epic time for the power to go out. Secret. Yeah, seriously. It's extremely important advice. You're very hard on yourself as an honest DM. Yeah, definitely don't be. It's easy to say, especially like if you're performing like an actual play, like a live actual play, then you're not only dealing with on the moment stuff that you're not prepared for on a regular basis, you have the entire technical aspect of what you're doing to have to worry about at the same time, and that will inevitably fail. You have the systems you're using, the programs and whatever that can fail. You just have to be able to roll with the punches and just remember, this is meant to be fun. Have fun. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you for watching this episode of Dungeon Mastering 101, Core Fundamental Foundations. It's actually Core Foundations. I just added fundamental in there. Do you have any tips or tricks based on your experience as a player or a DM? Was I off base in any of my suggestions? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga. See, I just messed up. Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and you can support the channel by becoming a patron on Patreon or a member on YouTube. You can even pick up Dragonlance Gaming materials using my affiliate links, and all links are in the description below. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patron Chris Androu. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga. Thank you for joining in that celebration. So for Dragonlance Saga, until next time, my name is Adam. I don't know what my name's going to be next time. I phrased that very strangely, and I had to play off of it. All right, well, until then, Slán Javar.